All right, all right. Well, hello everybody. This has been a great day so far. It's a beautiful day outside in Colorado and stuff like that, and I am joined with a extremely special guest. We know and love his videos, the Art Chad. So, Art Chad, how are you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. It's 6 p.m. here in Toronto, and just hanging out. Hit the gym, editing, grind set kind of day. Just ate a microwave potato and some sardines.
Oh, heck
I'm
yeah,
feeling good.
dude, that's awesome. I mean, a
I'm feeling
microwave.
healthy.
Oh, say that one more time.
I'm feeling healthy. I'm feeling clean.
That's so real, dude. Sardines and stuff like that kind of give you like a revitalization. You feel like your body's being rejuvenated.
Yeah, dude. The omega threes. I've been in and out of diet, like rabbit holes and red pills. I've gone through a lot of diets, and definitely like cutting out omega six and seed oils and focusing on like omega three and eating sardines every day. It's been good. I'm very incredulous with that shit. Like if something doesn't work, I hate when diet people are like, "You have to try this fucking thing. It changed my life." I'm like, no, it didn't. There's no way. But there's very few things that I would truly recommend, and like omega three, creatine, and like mouth taping, just very basic stuff you can do. So good.
It's really good because it's full on lifestyle changes too. A lot of dieting people, it almost feels like they promote that lifestyle and then they want to go back to eating unhealthy after they like reach their goal weight or their goal fitness.
Yeah, yeah, I know. And people are just everyone has something to sell you as well, right? Like it's really good engagement if you make a claim that a certain diet or a certain food is like life changing, right? So it's very good to be skeptical of like, here the way I always slice it is like, the Lindy effect.
I think I've heard of it
It's
before,
like
but detail it again.
it's just how long something has been around is like indicative of its importance and how long it will be around in the future. So when you're talking about like diet, right? The idea that in 2026 a new superfood comes out of nowhere that changes everyone's life is like, sort of bullshit. There's no way. But like basic, stuff that's been around for thousands of years, like fish and fasting and cardio, it's basic. It's basic stuff.
No, it totally makes sense because a lot of those diets, especially during the 80s and 90s, were produced by like food companies to basically demonize certain things like fat. I mean, fat, they literally
Yeah.
associated that with like being fat. And it's like, no, dude, the sugar is what's affecting you.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane to think even like I'm 27, when I was a kid, all the school snacks you would get would be like these weird like low calorie cookies. Like that era of diet food in like the early 2000s when I was like an 8-year-old boy. And my parents, like, God bless them, but were just like, "Oh, this is healthy. It's like a low calorie cookie. I'll put this in my son's lunch." I'm like, it's insane to think now. Like, I couldn't imagine doing that now, like giving if I had kids, giving my kids like packaged cookies for their lunch snack, right? It's nuts.
It's absolutely insane. And then another thing I remember too with a lot of like colas or whatever is they'd have aspartame in them. And aspartame is honestly a lot worse than just having straight up sugar. But people are like, oh, it's 0 calorie. And it's like, yeah, and if it heats up in your body, it becomes formaldehyde. Like you're poisoning yourself slowly.
Yeah, same with what are the new ones out now? Um, oh, my friend is so into like the folly of weird sugar analogs.
Oh, like
Like
stevia
you'll
and stuff
buy
like that?
like stevia is okay. There's is it maltodextrin? I'm thinking of
I think
potassium
so.
sorbate. Yeah, there's a bunch now. There's a bunch that like basically popped out of nowhere like 5 years ago, and now it's like they're in like you buy an energy drink and it has some sugar substitute you've never heard of that has no long term studies on it. Right? I'd rather just eat cane sugar. Like at least cane sugar is a plant, or like corn syrup. Like corn syrup is like you know what it is at least.
No, dude, that's so real. I mean, I guess someone could take like maybe the like clav approach and they're like, okay, if I do like some fent and some meth to looks max or something, maybe I don't care. But it's like, I don't know. I don't want something that I'm going to like drink it and there's no long-term study. And then suddenly I'm like sterile or something like that. That would freak me out.
Oh my god, dude, Clav's in a moment right now. I was trying to. It's really funny. Okay, so about 2.5 years ago, I did a video on the black pill.
Mm.
And I like summer 2023. And I remember when I made that video, I felt at the time I was like, oh, this is peak. Like I was apprehensive to release the video because I was like, oh, this is such a dead horse. Like, why would I release this black pill looks maxing video now? And that was 2.5 years ago. And now it's like I tried to reach out to Clav for an interview on transhumanism 4 months ago, and now it's like, you know, Rolling Stone is trying to interview him. Like he's so big now. He's like totally mainstream. There's these fucking there's this company called Wealth Simple, which is sort of like you can't day trade on it, but it's a third party investing app. It's sort of like Robinhood a little bit for Canada. Canada is really weird, strict it's really hard to day trade in Canada. So there's a lot of restrictions around like third party investing apps and shit like that. And they have these ads all over Toronto on billboards that say like the future is like bunker maxing, invest in whatever. The future is in the future you're nature pilled. Invest in this, right? And these giant billboards saying like maxing and pilled and all this fucking like looksmax.org lingo that has been around for 10 years. It's insane to see.
It's insane. And it almost reminds me of that one meme where it's like the red dudes and they're all like kind of cherishing a meme or something. And then corporations start cherishing it too. And everyone throws it out. I feel like in some ways, because they've adopted that language, it's kind of indicative that that's become the culture. But I feel like they're going to kind of move on to the next thing. And I'm interested to see what it's going to be.
Oh God. I can't even think, man. I'm so like I'm pretty online. Like, I'm on Twitter a lot. I can't even think what is bubbling up. I could see the like the goy slop goyim shit, like I think that going really mainstream. There was that video of somebody running for Congress. I think it was in Nashville, and he's talking about school lunches, and he says he's like talking to these students.
It's
and
James
like,
Fishback in Florida. Yeah.
And he's like, oh, your school feeds you goy slop. And I'm like, holy fuck. Like that's broken containment now.
It's gotten out. Dude, the SCP, the meme SCP has gotten out. It's just ravaging havoc right now. It's so funny. Like, it almost seems like even terms like Goyim or what have you were such like niche kind of forum language that I would have never thought in a million years it would have broken in any mainstream politics, business. Now it's like everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, even like slop as a suffix comes from goy slop. Like that's the original.
Right.
Like when someone says like, oh, this is AI slop, like AI slop as a concept, because English is really good at producing new compound words, right? Like English, if a prefix and a suffix are both relatively widely known, you can smash them together. So you can say AI slop, and if you know what slop and AI mean, you can just make new words, right? English is really good at that. But slop as a suffix comes from goy slop. Like that's AI slop is a like etymologically descendant from goy slop, right? And AI slop is totally mainstream. AI slop is in like, there's like New York Times and Wired and Vox articles using like AI slop. But I don't think they know that it comes from goy slop.
No, they don't. And not to mention, too, I remember, I think someone made like a Luigi Mangione meme or something like a month ago. And symbols like the black sun, the rotating black sun that people would use in edits, they would use like variants on that. Or like they do the like meme of a monkey and it was like bananas going around. I'm like, it's so weird how subtle it's like kind of infiltrated culture at that point.
Yeah. No, it's insane. It's truly insane.
So, oh, go ahead, brother.
I just want to say. So you said you're Catholic apologist. That's what you described yourself as. Yeah,
that's my main thing I was known for and stuff like that. I don't know if you recognize me at all, but one of my face was in one of your videos. I was that guy on Jubilee with Mehdi Hassan, and I blew up from that a little bit more. But then I had been doing stuff prior to that, and that was like one of my more like recent moments or whatever. But yeah, I've been doing the Catholic apologetic stuff for about 4 years now.
Wait, one sec. Were you the like what if I am a fascist guy?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my God. Okay, that just went full circle. I had no idea. Okay.
No, that's totally fine. And two, I'm an open book or whatever. I know. Some people might hear that and they're like, "Oh, this guy's like a freak or something." I'm an open book. I'm a normal dude. I promise.
Interesting. Okay, so walk me through that then, because I don't think I don't watch. You know, it's funny. I actually had a conversation with John Ronaldo,
Oh
who
wow.
was he like the guy who worked at Jubilee, who came up with. He doesn't work there anymore, but he came up with the surrounded format. So, and I know I've seen a few of them. I watched. Who did I watch recently? I watched Tim, because I had Tim Miller in my podcast
Oh, and
before.
he just
So I
did. He
watched.
have a recent episode?
Yeah, Tim Miller had a recent surrounded.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and he's interesting. He was a he was a Republican, and in 2016 he was involved in Jeb Bush's campaign. And then when Trump won the first time, I think he started distancing himself, and now he's independent, but he's more like he was like a never Trump Republican, and then switched, and now he's basically like Democrat Republican mix.
That makes sense. Maybe more
but he's
like
an interesting dude.
fiscally conservative.
He's like center right, but now I feel like I was just talking about this. It's like that meme from 2016 that was really big of like people in the center on the spectrum, and then the left running away, and then all of a sudden the centers became right wing. I feel like we're in the reverse, where the right is running so far right that centrists now find a larger home, like with the big tent on the left. So I feel like he's been a subject of that. Like, it's just by the virtue of being a centrist for a decade, is now more associated with like left-wing politics, like very center left, not far left.
Right. And that kind of makes sense too, because it seems like in some ways with the left, there's been somewhat of a like Thermodian reaction where the kind of more what we define like SJW type people or whatever, they're not really that popular anymore. So it almost seems like the left, in terms of like some of the candidates that they platform now, are a lot more moderate, like how they used to be, rather than kind of like leaning into that archetype like maybe they were around like 2017, 2018.
Yeah, and I think that's what's brought me farther left, because I would have like I was a self-proclaimed conservative for most of my like young adult life, like end of high school and like when I started university. And like my biggest gripe, like I always try to stay pretty principled, too much to the chagrin of people sometimes, and like free speech has always been one of my biggest issues. Fundamental human rights, like just like very basic, like capital L liberalism, like French Revolution kind of liberalism, right? Because I think that's truly what the West is built off of. And I was more conservative because I saw the biggest threat to that on the left, during like the peak of like left-wing cancel culture. And then I was 18, 19, white dude at an art school. So I really felt like I was a victim of that at the time when I was much younger. But now that I see that like social blacklisting far more apparent on the right, and the infighting and the purity testing on the right, than I do on the left. And people on the left seem like, most of the people I work with and the people I communicate with would like call themselves leftists or left wings or post left or like democratic socialists, like any variation, right? And I don't know any of them who still do the like woke purity testing anymore. That is really a thing that's just like, it exists, but it's so out of style.
Yeah, it seemingly doesn't ring true of how it used to, because I think that it was kind of at the Aurora Borealis. It was like the self-eating snake. At some point, if you went back enough in someone's like online history, or just things that they had said, or even just things conversational pieces they had now, people were just getting canceled for like the most inane stuff. And it was almost like an unsustainable system at that point.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, 100%. Like when you can't, I don't know, when you build any movement, whatever it is politically, off of purity testing, right? Like it's the issue with fascists, it's the issue with communists, it's the issue with like far leftists or anyone on the far right, like white nationalists. It's just like you can never go far enough, and that is sort of when you remove like fundamental human rights, when you remove like fundamental equality, when you remove capital L liberalism from a movement, it will become like this endless, like increasing division on either side to purity test and go farther and farther and farther to the margins.
And it's almost kind of like how, one day like Robespierre was the champion of the French Revolution. The next day he's getting his head cut off. It's like it's in some ways that purity test might kind of like outpace you in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I'm trying to think of some real life examples, like 2016 to 2020 Trumpers who have turned against Trump. Maybe like Tim Dillon, Andrew Schultz, like all those guys.
Yeah, they because Andrew Schultz, when the recent election was coming up, like he seemed to be very, if I'm thinking, I think I'm thinking of Andrew Schultz, but the comedian seemed to be very pro-Trump, and then kind of after like the 2024 election, where it seemed like either Trump did follow on promises and some of the more center people didn't like that, or he didn't follow that on them enough and they felt maybe kind of betrayed by the election. Kind of are coming back to a little bit of that like centerpiece, as we said before, where they had kind of always been, but intuitively, just because of how the culture was, they felt like they needed to align themselves more with like MAGA or what have you.
Yeah, I think the like Joe Biden's cognitive decline, although I would make the case that Trump is, basically in the same thing right now. Like Biden's cognitive decline and the cover up of that drove so many people away, right? When it's like, this is like, it feels like the tail end of maybe this early 2010s, mid 2010s, like woke purity test culture, is that it was very clear that to anybody with eyes who could just recognize, basic reality, that Biden was in cognitive decline, Biden wasn't fit to run the country, whether it was Alzheimer's or whether it was dementia or him getting old. There's no diagnosis, but it was very true. And then to have to deny basic reality for the purpose of towing party lines, I think just drove so many people who are fence sitters like totally away from for any sort of democratic or any sort of like left-wing politics, right? That totally makes sense why someone like Tim Dillon, who is like ultimately, I love Tim Dillon, I listen to him constantly, just endlessly critical of no matter what is happening. Like, we'll always call bullshit, we'll always call a spade, right? He's like, okay, well, if I'm on this side and I say Biden's demented, I can't say that, right? I have to deny basic reality. Therefore, right. I'm gonna move farther to the right now. But now the inverse is happening, where it's like Trump is all over the Epstein files. Trump is showing signs of cognitive decline. Do you know the thing with the hand bruises? Have you heard,
yes. I think I've seen a couple of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So the biggest theory behind that is that there's I don't want to mess up the medication name. There's an early Alzheimer's medication called Lexapro. Someone could back me up on that in the chat or correct me if I'm wrong on that.
I've heard of Lexapro before, and I think you're right about that.
Like that. So they inject it, they IV it into your hands once every 2 weeks, and they alternate hands, right? So this is how this medication's administered, and that totally lines up with Trump and being in public every 2 weeks, giant bruise on the hand, alternating hands, right? So there's a lot of evidence pointing to now that Trump is, literally has Alzheimer's. His father died of Alzheimer's at 86. Trump's 79 right now, 78, 79. So anyway, right, we're doing the same thing. It's like the same cycle's repeating. It's like there's this guy in office that's fucked. Everyone hates him. Has so much dirt in his hands, is in cognitive decline, and now it feels like a lot of the people on the right, especially people who are like really hardcore MAGA, have to deny basic reality to toe the party line. Like you saw this today with Pam Bondi in the DOJ. That meeting today, where did you see any of this?
I actually inform me on this, because I don't think I got to see the clip today yet.
It was they've been like not auditing, I forget the term, addressing the DOJ and addressing Pam Bondi on the Epstein stuff, and Thomas Massey spoke, Congressman Raskin, I forget his name. He's a Democratic congressman. He spoke, where they just push, like they're asking your questions about the Epstein stuff. And I believe one of them even suggested that why don't we do a joint task force between, like a nonpartisan joint task force between Democrats and Republicans to pursue everyone mentioned in the Epstein files and question them, and just do like a really full, like well-funded investigation into everybody, and she was like, no way, Trump's name isn't on it. Trump is totally fine. Everyone's totally fine. So you have the same thing. There are people denying basic reality in order to toe the party line. It's the exact thing that happened in 2020 with Biden.
Well, and really the Epstein files completely, like, I've seen a lot of different groups take that and be like, Trump's not our guy, whether it's more kind of like centrist voters that voted for him because of kind of the cancel. Dude, I hate saying the term woke. It sounds like I'm not even saying a real word, but like the woke cancel culture, for lack of a better term. And then it's like, people that are further to the right, like myself, took issue because, Trump originally for us seemed like kind of a bastion of not actual conservatism, but kind of acting as, for lack of a better term, what I would say like a Constantinian figure, allowing us to have these conversations about like maybe white identity or Christianity in the political sphere or what have you. And now it's like, he's covering up the whole Epstein stuff. I mean, just disgusting, right? I think anyone who is a decent human being can look at that and say that's perverse, right? I mean, just the way he was going back on that. And then subsequently how I mean, just from, kid talk on the street, he's got no aura anymore. Like, he was funny before, he had kind of charisma or whatever. He doesn't have any of that now. He's like a tired old man. And, because of that, it seems like his most loyal supporters are either like teal plants that are paid off to support him, like the Bronze Age pervert guys, or, any of these other people that are trying to like glaze JD Vance for the 2028 election, or it's like MAGA boomers who haven't really gotten the full picture, but even many of them have kind of woken up to some of his shenanigans.
Yeah. No, the teal plants. That stuff spooks me. That's my like do you know about Project Sunrise? Have you heard of this? It's the redevelopment plan for Gaza.
Yes, I have heard about it, but it sounds like you're going to cook on a point, so I want to hear it.
So this is like, I think it's such a great sort of instantiation of big tech's and the philosophy of big tech's influence on the administration is like big tech. The way big tech wants to go is fundamentally like undemocratic. It has nothing to do with like, American values. It has nothing to do with making America great again. Big tech is moving faster than the law can keep up.
Right.
Right? Like when we did like antitrust and monopoly breakups in like the 30s and 40s and 50s, the famous one with MGM, where at one point one studio controlled the entire vertical of film production. So they had all the actors' contracts. They owned the factories that made the film. They had patents on the canisters that held the film. They had patents on the cameras in the movie theaters. Like they had the entire vertical. So, right, 70 years ago, you could effectively break up that monopoly, and MGM got broken up into like RKO, Paramount. I believe there was 3 more that got broken up into 5 companies. Right, so we have this history of breaking up these big monopolies because capitalism eventually will produce these monopolies. That's why we have guardrails to break them up to keep things even. Big tech now is just moving so quickly the law can't keep up. Right, the first lawsuit of an artist suing a AI company was Sarah Anderson. You'd recognize her comics. She makes these very cute, like black and white, like woman with a cat kind of like web comics.
Oh yeah.
So she sued Stable Diffusion in 2023 for indiscriminately web scraping her artwork and putting it into data sets without asking. That case hasn't even gone to trial yet because the law moves so slowly, right? So that's 2023. You've gone from really, really bad recreations of like Will Smith eating spaghetti. Within 2.5 years, you've gone to like 1-to-1 recreations of whatever artist you want. And there's still no trial on the first lawsuit of an artist suing an AI company. So big tech's goal is to always be ahead of the law and then positions itself in a place where there will be no like democracy to get in the way. This is the fundamental project of neoliberalism. So to wrap back around, Project Sunrise, which is the redevelopment plan for Gaza, it was written by Jared Kushner, by a bunch of White House aides. They're trying to get Qatar on board, Egypt, Turkey, I believe, UAE, like a lot of the Abraham Accord countries as well, to in Gaza basically level it, get rid of all the rubble, move the displaced Palestinians, and build like the first network state where it's AI governance. It's run like a company. There's no democracy. There's no voting. It's run by a CEO. This is Curtis Yarvin. Like Curtis Yarvin's kind of ideal is this CEO monarch of a sovereign corporation. To instantiate that for the purpose of allowing big tech to incubate somewhere where there will be no laws, right? Like that won't be in America. There's no future where in 5 years from now all these tech companies are continuing to grow the American GDP. Like that's just the Bay Area. And it has to move out of America. It has to go somewhere else where there is literally no guardrails for it to grow. So when you're talking about like the teal influence, the big tech, like the anti-democratic, post-democratic network state, big tech influence in the government, that's the end goal of it, right? I think like ultimately someone like Trump and the old stock Republican staffers in the Trump administration don't even have a part in the future. They're sort of just there. Right? Like what's actually happening when you're talking about like Vance, when you're talking about Teal, when you're talking about how fast big tech moved right wing and moved to mega. That's why, because that's going to like confirm a future where they can basically build this like post-democratic network state with mass surveillance, with AI governance, where everyone has a digital ID. Right? That's the direction it's going.
100%. And I mean, you see kind of this almost taking place in the sociopathic behavior of someone like JD Vance, where he's grown in a lab. I mean, he's had like 2 name changes, right? Nothing that he does. And I think the reason that people don't like him as a candidate or really as a person is everything that he does feels fake and performative. It feels kind of like you were drawing up a politician archetype in your head and making that a person. And really, the reason why is because he's exactly trying to go kind of post-MAGA with this, exactly like you were saying. Archad, do you want me to call you by your actual name or as Archad?
You can call me actual. I feel like, yeah, you can call me my actual name.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't care either way.
As you were saying, Brogan, like, basically there's this idea that Teal has used kind of the fumes of MAGA to feel what's coming next, and what's coming next is this technocratic nightmare. I had this gentleman by the name of Basil. I think you'd really like his stuff on X. He's great, and he covers like a lot of this weird kind of Teal connection. But one of the things he remarked on is they don't really have any allegiance to any political side. They have their own vision, right? Because on the one hand, they'll fund like the Red Scare podcast with like Dasha and the other girl that I can't remember the name of. And that's kind of more like the post-left, like Bernie, Bernie supporters who maybe got kind of burnt out on it and are now moving into kind of the next stage of what it means to be left-wing. And then on the other hand, it's like you've got like the Bronze Age pervert kind of like Nietzschean masculine types that represent this kind of like right-wing coalition of Teal's network. But ultimately, they have the same vision of, again, something like a Project Sunrise, where they're going to usher in this sort of technocratic surveillance state that we're all going to be imprisoned under. And it's been interesting because a lot of left-wing and right-wing people have recognized this, right? I mean, the ascendancy of Elon, especially under the, kind of Trump campaign and the Trump movement, and the fact that, all these big tech giants that a year ago were all paying lip service to kind of censorship and what have you from the left, now suddenly became like based and right wing. I don't think so. I think what it is they're seizing the moment. They're seizing the momentum to usher in what comes next. And what comes next is exactly that technocratic nightmare that we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, of course. I mean, and they were seizing the moment when they were left wing, right? It was like, if you go back to 2016, when you would associate big tech with sort of like wokeism or whatever, it was ultimately to keep their like new hires happy, to keep their staff happy, because their staff was all coming out of big liberal universities in the U.S. And it was to go with the sitting administration, to go with the side that was going to like benefit them the most. Like capital isn't political. Capital is capital, right? It is above everything, right? So you have a company like Apple where for 4 years they're like, oh yeah, this left-leaning, left-coded Bay Area futuristic tech company, and then within 6 months of Trump, they're gifting Trump a golden statue.
It makes
what was it, the solid gold? Yeah, the solid gold. You saw that, right? Like the solid gold plaque they gifted. Like Tim Cook is in the Oval Office gifting Trump this solid gold plaque.
It's crazy. You would have never imagined something like that. He postured himself as being anti-big tech and anti-big censorship, and now it's like he's in bed with those same people we once called enemies.
Yeah. I mean, this is like when I think about fascism, when I talk about fascism, this is okay. This is contentious because I think a lot of, I'm not saying you, but a lot of the right has sort of begun to equate calling somebody fascist or calling out fascism as analogous to like violence, right? Calling somebody a Nazi. And I've seen this a lot on Twitter. I've seen this a lot in interviews or like podcasts. When someone says like, "Oh, you're a fascist," the right seems to take that as like violent language. Like it's like defaming somebody. It's very violent rhetoric. When I talk about fascism, and I feel like I really have to define this. It's like the specific kind of like Mussolini style fascism. That's what fascism definitionally is. Like Mussolini started fascism as a movement,
right? And
Mussolini's fascism ultimately was about pandering to power to gain power, right? So when Mussolini came up, before he was the leader of Italy, when he just had this sort of fascist movement that was growing, he would always pander to like revolutionary artists, the Italian futurist movement, which like gave birth to like so much design, so many like car designs. Like it's one of the most important art movements of the 20th century. They were all Italian fascists in the after World War I in the 1920s. Mussolini swore off the Catholic Church. He thought the Catholic Church was the worst thing to happen in Italy. He thought the Catholic Church needed to be completely usurped from power because they were keeping Italy away from growth. And then once Mussolini gains power and he has his, he sort of has his hold where he can start like operating the way he wants to, immediately swore off the artists. It's like, fuck those people. I'm not dealing with those people anymore. I don't want any revolutionary, like avant-garde leftists in my movement. The Catholic Church is based. I love the Catholic Church because the Catholic Church started supporting Mussolini. They had a good symbiotic relationship. And then when Hitler came to power, or started coming to power in 1933, Mussolini thought Hitler was a dork. Mussolini thought judging anybody based on race was ludicrous. He has this very famous quote, which you might know, of race is 5% of what makes somebody up. You shouldn't pay attention to race. Race is meaningless. Right. We're going to go post-racial. And then once Hitler was more influential than him, Mussolini goes anti-Semitic because he realized that, okay, now that I'm like not the top dog in Europe anymore, right? Now that I'm subservient to Hitler, I have to pander to Hitler. So all of the anti-Semitism and all the anti-Semitic laws that came from fascist Italy came after Hitler got big because he had to pander to Hitler. So that style of fascism, which is exactly what big tech is doing, is this constant pandering to power to gain power. I think like Epstein's a great example, a little bit, right? Like Epstein's whole project, it seems from the documents, like over the last 2 weeks, was just building this massive fucking network where he's like, there's evidence he's Mossad, there's evidence he's a Russian spy, there's evidence he's selling secrets to Saudi Arabia, there's evidence he was like pro-Democrat, pro-Trump, friends with Noam Chomsky, friends with Steve Bannon, right? Like just completely building this like unprincipled, unbased, multilateral network for the purpose of instantiating his own power. Like that's truly what fascism is.
Well, and in some ways it kind of becomes very obsessed with just the acquisition of power, whatever means that takes place. It's almost in some ways a very Nietzschean idea, this kind of beyond good and evil view where it doesn't matter what you pander to, it doesn't matter what the cultural movement is at the time. It's like seize that moment for power, for vitality, take hold, kind of entrench your way into it. And then from that point, the world is your oyster. I mean, it's funny how in one conversation, Epstein would be almost seemingly promoting kind of like transgenderism or what have you. And then he's like talking up Steve Bannon like you and I are going to go get like a burger or something, right? It's a total kind of sycophantic desire to just be in with all crowds so that you're never kind of at odds with anybody and you never have anyone to really take away that power you want to acquire.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think it's very like the world is so post-definitional. It's so post-definition, right? Like this happened with, I'm trying to think the first time this happened, like terrorist, right? Like terrorist means something very specific. And then terrorist started sort of losing its meaning in the early 2010s. And then Nazi sort of lost its meaning, where Nazis like, okay, anybody I don't like on the right wing is a Nazi, even though it's not what Nazi means. And now we're there with fascist, where it's like fascist is just this nebulous word that means right wing thing I don't like, which is not what it means, right? I think it's very important to like clarify what fascism is and why fascism is like fundamentally bad. Because if you don't clarify what you're talking, if we don't clarify like what the definition is, we're all over the place. Like it's apples to oranges.
Absolutely. Well, and at that point, when you have a definitional issue, you have kind of a conceptual issue as well. You're not on the same page of what something is. You're not on the same page of like the nature of politics really at that point. I mean, someone could say that a fascist is anywhere from sort of what the authoritarian personality would define it to something like a Peter Thiel or a Jeffrey Epstein, where it's just someone who's willing to use the leverages of power to get where they want to go and affect their goals.
Yeah.
And
100%.
And I think in some ways, I think it's funny. I'm glad I'm able to talk with you kind of that post-Jubilee thing, because I think a lot of people, who might be more like left-leaning or what have you, might think it's like, oh, it's, he's just this basement dweller who's trying to be edgy or what have you. And don't get me wrong, I was trying to kind of troll Mehdi specifically a little bit, because I think that the vibe of that day when we recorded the episode was that he was this not very sincere person, right? He wasn't going to engage with us on a level of wanting to get to the bottom of truth, but instead kind of using those definitions, like hurling kind of those like political slurs out. So I said, okay, we're just going to kind of troll this guy. But I think in reality, when we sit down like we are now and we're having kind of a discussion about politics, what's beautiful is I think we get to understand more the motivations by which we're operating and stuff like that. And people don't come out as two-dimensional characters anymore. Like there's a lot of left-wing people I oftentimes find myself in conversation where we're both very considerate of, what's going on with the Palestinian population right now in Israel. And it's horrific to watch those videos on our screen and see, children being torn apart. We're told by like the State Department they're all terrorists. And it's like, all I see is women and children and old men, bro. Like, you're not going to lie to me in this moment. And seeing, I think at the end of the day that it's like, we have those moments where we almost either come together or we kind of agree more, because it's just a very human moment. It's just a very like human emotion.
Yeah. Kind of off topic, but it's really funny. I used to be like probably 2018. I was a huge fan of like the intellectual dark web group.
Oh, really?
I was a big fan of Sam Harris forever. And I had Sam Harris's meditation app. I would listen to Sam Harris's podcast constantly. I thought Sam Harris is really interesting. And he's just like so dogmatically Zionist that he's fallen off the face of the earth. Like, I don't see anybody talk about Sam Harris or invite Sam Harris on anything anymore, because it's like, that's one of those issues, right? Where it's like, if you can't agree with base reality, if you are going to keep denying what is in front of your eyes to toe your party line or to toe your beliefs, right? Like, you can't admit there's a genocide in Palestine. Like, how can I trust you? And that's totally like Sam Harris is a victim of that. Ben Shapiro is a victim of that. Ben Shapiro is totally like, his numbers are massively down over the past 2 years. And it seems like there's this old stock of conservative influencer who just is like, they're not going to come back. Like Ben Shapiro's moment is over. Sam Harris's moment is over,
100%. And in that time, they had kind of the Jordan Peterson blow up where they were the voice of reason. Facts don't care about your feelings. Well, what about the fact that there is a genocide going on and these people flat deny it? Isn't that a fact? Yeah. It's so funny that they made their legacy based on that. They made their legacy on being principled like you've striven to be, Brogan. And instead, I think in recent years, we've seen the mask torn away and they have these massive oversights where they're trying to cover up something just to toe that party line.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as educated on the facts of the history of the Israel-Palestine conflict as I should be. I think there's a few things I know, but it's nothing I would ever like make serious statements about. But it's insane to see like just the examples of the stranglehold, like the Winter Olympics, right? Wasn't what Russia No, what am I thinking of? Is Russia competing in the Olympics?
I believe Russia is banned this year.
Yeah, so like Russia is banned, but Israel isn't, right?
And you heard the boos when they're walking
what,
in.
Yeah, they got booed, right? And that's not to make light of what Russia's doing. It's just to say that it's analogous, right? It's a country invading a sovereign territory, and violating international law. But for some reason, one of them the international community is okay with, and from one of them, it's like, oh, Russia, we can't support Russia, right? It's like, no, you can not support either of them. I don't think the Russian Olympians don't deserve to get banned, right? It's not like the teams aren't state funded. Like Team America is not state funded. Team America is corporate funded, right? So it's like it has nothing to do with the country. It's an independent organization that runs off of money and profit. So to ban a country symbolically for no reason, and then to not ban another one that's arguably committing a worse atrocity is fucking insane.
It's absolutely insane. And I think, there's a Jewish writer who you might have heard of his name before. Oh, before I bring him up, do you watch GDF? Oh, we got $3, Brogan. The stream is ending the left-right divide. Great collab, brothers. Anonymous. Thank you for the 3 anonymous. Do you watch GDF at all on YouTube?
I get recommended. I've seen a few GDF videos. I get recommended them a lot. That's like Gentile Defense Force, right?
Yes. And
or Goy Defense Force, one of the two.
Actually, does it stand for Goy Defense Force? I know he's kind of I know he's an anti-imperialist. I don't know what his exact political leaning is. I think he's maybe an anti-colonial. And when I say Marxist, I don't mean this as a slur. I mean more like the IRA or what have you, like an anti-colonial Marxist, from what I know. But he's great. He makes great videos on the history of the conflict and stuff like that. I highly recommend his stuff. But there was a Jewish writer by the name of Israel Shayhawk that, brings up the fact that on the world stage, I think what Israel oftentimes does is they, sort of appeal to the legacy that they've had, stuff that went on during World War II or what have you, is kind of jacketing themselves from criticism. Whereas Russia, even though Russia's been through tragedies or whatever, it's easy to like look at them and say, okay, you're banned from the Olympics. You don't really have any like moral high ground to stand on. Whereas a country like Israel, every single time they've done something or they've been called out to something, they do this callback to what happened during World War II or what have you. And it's like, well, we're not engaging with that right now. We're talking about your action here, right? It's not saying we want to destroy people's lives or hurt people. It's like you just bulldoze like somebody's house, right? Like somebody's, 500-year-old like villa or something where they grew olives. Like what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, you have Barry Weiss, who just took over editor-in-chief as CBS, did a town hall meeting. And she said this live. This wasn't like a hot mic. She said this to an audience. She said, Holocaust education failed Americans because they took away the wrong message. The message wasn't that genocide is bad or that this is bad or the other thing. The message was that like violence against Jewish people is bad. So like, that's an insane thing to fucking say. That's an insane thing to say like, oh, like this one's fine. The Holocaust wasn't about like the tragedy of any sort of genocide or ethnic cleansing. The Holocaust is only about Jews. And then the fact that Americans have taken away that genocide is bad. Holocaust education has failed Americans, right? She said that. That's fucking insane.
100%. Well, and it goes back to kind of that cancel culture that we talked about earlier, where it's like a new form of cancellation. It's not like you're saying, well, I want to especially attack Jewish people because I want to find just any reason to do it. It's like, I think most people recognize that if any group's being harmed or genocided or mistreated, that's wrong, right? That any ethnic group being mistreated is wrong. And instead, it's like, there's this kind in Barry Weiss's world, there's this special treatment of Jewish people, like their tragedy takes a special place, but then everyone else is just kind of like, what am I, like, chopped liver, right? I mean, it's insane because it creates kind of like a difference in value of a human life, whereas we recognize that it's like all human life is valuable. So it's like if a Jewish person's dignity is being harmed, of course that's wrong. But then if a Palestinian person's life or any other ethnic group's life is being harmed, that's also wrong too. And why should anyone get a special out excuse or be elevated above the rest?
Yeah, no, 100%. 100%.
So, oh, dude, I was just about to ask you a question about yourself, but we got another 3. Thank you for the 3 red win. Let's see here. Oh, and I told you, Brogan, that I'll split everything that comes in with you 50-50, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you don't have to if you don't if it's too much work. I'm totally fine.
Dude, it's not any work at all. I'm just happy to have you on. Redwin sent $3. He said, "Hey, Pinesap, I don't mean to bother you, but can you please pray for my dad? He's a bit oh, that word censored, and suffers from Catholic derangement, agnostic and suffers from Catholic derangement syndrome. Thank you, brother. God bless." Yeah, we'll pray for your dad, brother. I appreciate that. Brogan, I've been wanting to ask you this entire time, man. You've hinted at it in your videos, and I've always been very kind of inspired by it and wanted to know more about your story. It seems like you've had this kind of, for lack of a better term, what I'd call like spiritual odyssey with like philosophy and what have you. I know you touched on this, like, I believe either it was in your black pill or your red pill video where you were talking about like Pearl Davis and, you know, her whole shenanigans and stuff like that about, you know, you had been kind of maybe in the red pill sphere for a bit, but then you came out of that. Just walk us through your life and your spiritual odyssey, brother. I think we all want to know more about you.
Trying to think. By do you mean like with religion or just with like my values?
Honestly, with all, mostly like maybe philosophical, theological, and just kind of your general like life totality, like the way that you see the world.
I think I don't know. I find a lot of how I've changed over the years just comes from learning more about the world and just becoming like better educated in a broad sense. Like when I was younger, I was a lot more reactionary, and I think a lot of like totalitarian ideals were attractive to me because they market themselves as very sexy and they market themselves as very effective, right? But my fundamental critiques have always been my fundamental values have always been like free speech, fundamental human rights, liberalism, you know, everyone born equal, everyone deserves an equal chance, like very, very classic like Western liberalism kind of stuff. And so I've always positioned myself as like, where am I finding a coalition that is supporting those values and who seems to be against those values right now, right? So like I said, when I was a lot younger, I was very, very like, I would have been like an anti-woke conservative like shit poster, like 18, 19, 20. And then just moved away from that. And then now my biggest issue with a lot of right-wing, especially like commentators and pundits, because I feel like I have to make this distinction. A lot of people who are like self-proclaimed leftists or self-proclaimed on the left never make the distinction when they're complaining about the right wing or they're complaining about conservatives or whatever they're complaining about. They never make the distinction on like what the group is, right? I totally understand why somebody, and I've been through like a lot of the states. I've been to like West Virginia. I've been to all these places. I totally understand why somebody, and where I'm from in Canada is very poor. I'm from Nova Scotia, born and raised. It's the poorest. It's the lowest GDP compared to any state or province in North America. Like, there's no state in the U.S. that is a higher GDP or even equivalent than Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia is really, really low. So Nova Scotia is really poor. That's the world I grew up in. I totally understand why somebody who is just working class and who wants things fixed and who hates bureaucracy and hates all the teetotaling would vote for somebody on the right because they think it's the best and fastest way to improve their lives, right? Especially when the right is pandering more towards like civic national values, which I totally agree with, right? I think the left has done a horrible job, less so now, but historically, like over the last decade, the left has done a horrible job at accepting, I think, the objective standpoint that like Western culture is the best culture on earth, right? It's the reason why America and Canada and Western Europe are the countries that are the farthest ahead of anybody else. It's the reason why you can come here, you can make money, you can live your life. You have freedom of speech, you have freedom of you have representation, you have freedom of expression. You can do whatever you'd like, right? And those, it's because we have this freedom. And I think to try to make an equivalence between like American culture and like Afghanistan or China or somewhere else and be like, oh, all culture's the same. It's like, no, it's not the same. We live in the best part of the world. End of story. And the left has done a very, very poor job of like even attempting to deal with that fact. They equate it to like racism, which is not racism. It's not even xenophobia, right? Like you can objectively say like the Taliban run Afghanistan is a worse place to live than Canada or America or the UK or Norway or Germany or France. That's not based in anything ethnic or racial. That is just a fact on how these countries are run. So my principles have always been like freedom first and foremost, not truly like in the libertarian sense, but in like a Democrat or like a social democrat kind of sense. Like I definitely moved away from the right, and I moved away from more totalitarian thinking. Sorry, I didn't finish my previous point. I just remembered. So I see why. Sorry, I started like 5 stories at once here.
Dude, you're totally fine. I just want to let you know if there's any nerves or whatever on your end. I'm lucky to be able to speak to you, man. So don't feel pressured at all. Oh, no, we love this.
You're good. I just think really fast and go through so many things so quick in my head. So when I see that more on the left now than I do on the right. I see, like I said before, I see the right as the people doing more of this purity testing, more anti-democratic, more moving away from like fundamental human equality into a social Darwinist, a world rooted in like biological realism where some people are less than others. I see those ideas bubbling up more on the right than I do on the left. I saw it more on the left when I was in university, when I was like 20 in like 2018, 2016. I wouldn't blame somebody who is like working class, who just wants a better future for their family and a better future for themselves and more freedom, because that's what everyone wants. I don't blame those people for voting right wing, because the right seems to offer the best answers, right? Historically, over the last decade, the right is were the people who are saying like the West is the best, bureaucracy sucks, all this shit sucks. We want you to like be able to make money and have a house and have property and defend your property and have children. So I totally understand why someone would vote right. I don't blame anybody for voting right and for voting for MAGA. But now that it's so demonstrably untrue, and all MAGA seems to have left now, and all that kind of brand of conservatism, all they have left now are the pundits, right? Like you have like someone like Tim Pool, who seemingly against all of his values and why he started his career, is still endlessly towing this MAGA party line, even though it's like it's unequivocally against his values or what he claims his values are. And so seeing this combination of the right totally moving away from its values and then right-wing pundits backing up the administration in order to keep their seat in power, in cultural power, and in social power, is just so frustrating. It's so frustrating. It's so just deeply evil and immoral.
Mm.
So now I feel like the only home for me, and the only home for people who, really believe in like just fundamental equality as a first principle, is the left. I don't see it much on the right. And the right wingers I see who, like, again, I'm fine with most right wingers. The right wingers I see who are open to those ideas are the ones moving away from MAGA. Even like, I disagree with Nick Fuentes on like many, many fundamental things. But Nick Fuentes even is like, okay, like, what are we doing here? We have to sort of redefine ourselves now. Like, especially the last few months, he seems to totally be he's become disenfranchised with his movement. And he's hated Trump for a while, but to an ever increasing degree.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think in some ways the political landscape has changed in a manner of, what are people's like interests or what's guiding them. And you have a lot of people who, like Nick, for instance, like if you look at his clips or what have you, he's remained the same or consistent. But I think the problem we've had, to give some context to kind of that side, since I'm on that side of the internet, those people are all my friends and stuff like that, is there's a lot of people that kind of are like come latelys, right? Like they came to the party late and suddenly it's like they're going to lecture us about how we've been doing things or how we've thought of things for like the longest time, right? So, a good example is like, I think you've probably seen the craziness with Candace Owens, right? Like the Sumerian tablets and the time travel and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, bro, what are we doing? Like, this is just false, right? Or, almost this idea of, I remember for a long time too, and I won't cut corners. I speak about the Jewish question a lot and stuff like that. It's an issue that I do feel like, and we could get into more what I mean by that, but I do feel like it's an issue that's very pertinent to not only our time, but a big part of, the history of the West or what have you. But you get a lot of people that I think Nick has called them like low IQ anti-Semites, where they're blaming like the sinking of the Titanic, like it's the Jews or something. I'm like, bro, like there's no evidence for that. Like, what are you talking about? Right. So in some ways it's the MAGA like culture became more popular, and there were a lot of subsequent movements and subcultures, like we were talking earlier with like slop now being used equivocally with like AI slop or what have you. That culture became more popular, but with it almost took on this sort of I don't know how else to say it, except popularity kind of breeds a level of lack of nuance or like a lack of applying it in the right way that I think now we're starting to see with these people who weren't at the party the entire time, and they're lecturing us about how to do things when we've been here like 4 or 5 years. I mean, I've had the same politics since like 5 years ago, right? And I'll get people on Instagram or whatever when I post something, being like, just because I don't think that Charlie Kirk was killed by Mossad, that I like got the call or something. I'm like, what are you talking about, right? I've been here the entire time.
Yeah, Twitter's so bad because it's so addicting, and I have so much fun on Twitter sometimes. But it paints a like a nasty picture of the world. I mean, I get the same stuff. I don't know what people like. I'm pretty open, and especially I have like a podcast. Like anybody who watches the podcast is going to be pretty familiar with like my ideas. They're not going to misjudge me or mischaracterize me. But I get the same thing. Like I'll say anything left wing, even though I'm like pretty openly liberal, and I'll get the same comments of being like, "Oh, you took money." I'm like, "Yes, me, 145K YouTuber from Nova Scotia got paid by the Democratic Party, or got paid by AIPAC." Like I don't know. People are crazy, and there continues to be events that I just think breaks people's minds.
Yes.
We have the benefit of being young. Like when COVID happened, COVID didn't break my worldview. No. COVID didn't crack how I think about things. If you're 50 and COVID happens, that would totally shake your understanding of the world. The Epstein stuff as well. I think the Epstein stuff is one of those things that just like breaks people's conceptions of how the world works. And I think if you're old, or you're like a low information person, and that's your introduction to corruption. Your introduction to corruption was COVID, or your introduction to corruption was the Epstein files. Like, yeah, you're going to start defaulting to this worldview where everything is the fault of the Jews, or everything is the fault of like pedophiles and Satanists, and every bad thing that happens is at some point connected to like this secret cabal.
Well, not to mention, too, it's like, even with the files, right? And I was actually discussing this with a friend literally yesterday, and I want your thoughts on this, Brogan. I think the DOJ deliberately just kind of mass dumped the files because they knew people would get in this kind of scuffle of like not knowing what was true versus what was false. And in some ways, it like allows the people who are guilty within the files to get off scot-free, because it's almost like if a bar fight broke out and they're off on the side and they're able to just leave the bar without being held like accountable for any of their actions, right? I mean, a good example is, Anonymous, thank you for the $5. Let's see here. He said, oh, come on. I always hate how the events take a moment to load. What a glorious gift to watch Sappy on Wigga Wednesday. Hey, it's a Wednesday. We're appreciating it. We're living it up. We love it, right? We love Canada. We love America. But it's interesting because, you probably saw that line about George Bush Sr. Like, oh, he was cutting people's feet off and like eating them and stuff like that. And it turned out based on the analysis that it was like some radio call and like a transcript from the email. And people weren't really like making that connection. But intermixed with that, it's like there are very real deals, very real collaborations, very real events that Epstein did engage in. And to equivocate the two, that which, was just like any spam we get in our email, right? I mean, you open up your Gmail and there's a million different newsletters for stuff, and real emails like Epstein was sending out and collaborating with these people. I think it was a deliberate attempt to kind of cover a lot of these people's tracks. What are your thoughts on that?
That's an interesting idea. Flesh Simulator had a great video, his Epstein Files video from last week. I thought it was really good because he makes the same point where it's like, okay, there's the statement about what is that page? It's not a witness statement. I believe, someone's gonna crucify me for getting this wrong. So bear with me. I believe it's an anonymous tip.
Oh, yes.
That they had received at some point of Trump like murdering somebody, right?
Right.
Oh, one sec. Sorry, one sec. I just got a giant dono. Oh, thank you for the 100. He said, gotta mog feels guys donators. Can't let them think the left is a bunch of brokies.
We're gonna have a donation war now. It's gonna be awesome.
Yes, step your game up. Feels guy chat. Or Pinesap. Is Pinesap your main?
Yeah, it's my mate, dude. Yeah. Elon nuked my old Twitter because I was criticizing him on the H1B thing. So I have to go by Feels Guy on Twitter. But yeah, it's Pinesap.
Okay, yeah, Pinesap.
And if you feel more comfortable using my real name, it's Connor. But you don't have to if you don't want to.
Okay. Anyway, that page, right? Which I saw a lot of like Dean Withers, Harry Sisson, like that kind of apparatus on Twitter sharing around a lot, was just an anonymous tip that was deemed incredible, right? It wasn't uncredible, right? There was no reason to pursue this anonymous tip. But people ran with it, and it's like all that does is detract away from the actual evidence, right? All that does is that just takes away from like what is the actual fucking story. Like I don't care that someone called in one time and said that Trump murdered somebody. Like that's irrelevant to me if that's like totally unjustifiable or unbased. So let's focus on, and that was Flesh Simulator's point as well. Focus on what is verifiable from the fucking Epstein files, so people can be prosecuted and put the trial and put in jail for their crimes. And then to the point you're making of it being intentional. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't put it past the administration to fuck up that bad. There was the case today with the DOJ hearing where there was a list of, it was released in the files, and it was a list of victim names. And the reason that list existed is because it was a list of victims who said they didn't want their names to be released, right? So the list was like, here are the names to not release. They requested their names don't be released. And the names aren't redacted. So they just threw that in there. So it's like the file exists for the purpose of making sure the names don't get released. And then the file was put out unredacted. Then you also have like Leslie Wexner being all over the files, but then the one that says he's a co-conspirator, his name is redacted, even though his name is in 1,000 other files. Like there's so many. I err on the side. Like I'm pretty incredulous with conspiracies, and I always err on the side of people just make mistakes, and the mistakes seem conspiratorial. But most of the time, it's as boring as it sounds. It's a bunch of incompetent, aides and staffers who are getting paid $60K, $80K a year, names you've never heard of. They're like, okay, here's 10,000 documents. Go through and pull out all these names. And it's just some like guy who's 26 in an office doing this for 2 weeks, right? Like that's probably what it is.
Which totally makes sense. I mean, we've both worked jobs where it's like, when you're given a big project, you control F stuff, you're using AI. It's like you're trying to cut down your work like anybody else. And so maybe there isn't a greater conspiracy going on. It's interesting because it's that old reaction image of the person you hate just made a really good point. Andrew Tate, he's got a lot of problems, a lot of bad things that he does, but he did make this really good point on Twitter where he said, if they're not held accountable for this, they won't be held accountable for anything. And I would completely agree with that sentiment in of itself, where it's like, if this moment is not taken to hold any of these people who are guilty of these horrendous crimes accountable for their actions, it will set a precedent where they can really get away with anything they want. And then at that point, just either have like plausible deniability or just admit it and be like, what are you going to do about it? Right? Like, it's so much bigger than us that you feel almost like you would almost feel powerless to prosecute or go after these people that are so evil and horrendous and wicked and are really looking to just like ultimately continue to run the show as things have been.
Which it's to my my biggest fear, especially with the Trump administration, is that like you see this is sort of how any totalitarian regime starts to operate. Is, we have this standard in the West that you can't lie, and if you lie, you're held accountable.
Right.
And if you confabulate, you will get held accountable. You will get corrected, and these things will harm your political career. And then when you get the beginning of totalitarian regimes, when people are elected in, and they start to realize they can get away with a lot more, they start to openly lie, knowing that everyone knows they're lying, like the same way Putin does. Like, Putin doesn't give public addresses where he's trying as diligently as he can to tell the whole truth, right? Putin bold-facedly lies to the citizens of Russia constantly. So does Kim Jong-un. Like, they're not concerned with the fact they're lying, and they know that there's no consequences. And
right.
The citizens know they can't call it out because nothing will happen, right? People don't protest in Russia because it's like a bigger headache to protest. People don't protest in Russia because it's like, it's illegal. They might end up in jail. They might get their name on a blacklist for the rest of their lives and being able to be hired. Like, there's so many, it's just not worth it. And what truly scares me, to go back to what we were talking about with the sort of convergence of big tech and the presidency, is this alignment of values and approaching a world where, the ICE body cams have facial recognition technology that logs protesters into a blackmail docket as domestic terrorists owned by Palantir, right? Like, this is, and none of this is off base. None of this is unsubstantiated. Like, there is totally things happening right now. There's totally things being signed and things in motion that are, Palantir is creating these blackmail files on Americans whose only crime is being against the sitting administration, right? And the ICE stuff has been a huge issue for even Republicans who have turned against Trump, watching, that boy who got taken out of class, the 5-year-old boy who was they're trying to deport, and he got held in ICE detention and got sick. He got food poisoning from the food he was fed. And all the pictures were all, I forget his name, but the pictures were all over social media, right? And you have Republicans, you have people who are like diehard Trumpers who voted Trump 3 times, who are like, wait, like, that's, I thought we were deporting criminals. Why are we taking a 5-year-old boy out of elementary school and hauling him off, right? And then so the fact that you can be, you can be a pro-Trumper, you can be a Republican, you can be right wing, you can be for the administration. And then once you have an issue with the administration, you can just wind up being forever known as a dissident within some algorithm, and basically have like a shadow social credit score on your acceptance of the city administration. And that's like, when you watch, like, Alex Peretti's murder was labeled a murder. Like, they're investigating it as a murder now, and that's like, it's not a debate anymore. It's being investigated at the state level as a murder. And you have JD Vance on NBC saying, like, it's not a murder, and then the interviewer is like, no, it is. Like, it was. I'm not like, this isn't like an ideological claim. It's literally a murder. It's being investigated as a murder. And JD Vance is like, no, it's not. It's not a murder, right? Like, 10 years ago, that would have been, career ending. Now it's like, he could just fucking say it. Nobody cares. No one's going to stop him from saying that. No one's going to go against him for saying that. His job's not in jeopardy. He'll never face any consequences for saying that.
Well, and it's interesting because now we're in a sort of precedent with the world where I almost feel that because of the polarization of post 2016, where any of the things that have happened, kind of regardless of where you fall on them or what have you, any of the events, there's this tendency where it's very stark to watch like the 2012 election or the 2008 election and kind of look at this like shared civility, or like, I'm not going to go there and calling my opponent this or using this blackmail or what have you, to kind of this all out like bare knuckle boxing that we've seen for really at this point, like the past 10 years now, right? Where it's this idea of, if I don't undercut them, they're going to undercut me. And so I always have to be on the edge, which kind of creates this this desperation or this effect that, now that I'm thinking about it with you, Brogan, like I think could lead to another kind of Epstein type thing, right? Where there's this powerful figure, there's this shadowy figure that comes along and says, hey, I have, in the back of his mind, he's like, I have my own interests. I have my own ways of using these people as my chess pieces for my larger plan, but I'll come to your side, or I'll come to sort of your political arrangement and promise my help, my assistance, my resources. All you got to do is give me what I want. And you go from essentially not that we killed Epstein, but you go from taking out one Epstein to, in some ways, creating a political vacuum where there's a million of them, because it's this race to the bottom, right? Nobody has any principles. There's no agreed kind of civil law anymore. It's just like anything that can undercut someone, I'm going to do, and I'm going to defend with my teeth to the end. Because if I don't do it, then I lose.
Yeah, I mean, you see this with, the Republicans redrew a lot of like the voting lines, started gerrymandering and voting on like gerrymandering stuff. And now you see the Democrats doing the same thing in response, right? And there's a lot of people like, I listen to a lot of Kyle Kulinski. I don't know if I call myself a Kyle Kulinski. Do you know Kyle Kulinski?
Yeah, I do know Kyle Kulinski.
Yeah. I don't know to the degree I'd call myself a Kyle Kulinski fan, but I just happen to listen to a lot of Kyle Kulinski. And someone like that, who I disagree with this, who was like, good, fuck the Republicans. We need to do the same thing. We're going to gerrymander. We're going to use their tools against them. And it's like, what precedent does that set? That sets a world where entropy just keeps increasing, where it's like these two sides are at constant war with each other. We don't get back to civility. I'd like to think that, I think sort of I try not to be too super nihilistic, but I don't know if we're getting back that civility. I don't think that civility is coming back. I think we have entered, and whether it was, if Trump is like such a unique case, or if there was, something going on since 2008 where people just lost total trust in the institutions, and it bred the social climate it bred a social climate that wanted to do away with civility and wanted to go more into this cutthroat sort of like third world politics that we have now. Regardless of what it was, like, I don't think we're getting back what we had. Like, we're not going to go back to the 1990s. We're not going to go back to the early 2000s where there was this way to conduct yourself, right? We're sort of stuck with this cutthroat world that we've created for ourselves. And I think that's I don't know. That's my biggest black pill. I have no hope pill I have no white pill for the world getting better, or at least the Western politics getting better anytime soon.
Well, and I'm so glad that you kind of touched on that element, because I think you're going to agree with this. Think about how many 2000s nostalgia videos there are now about like growing up and we were playing Wii, or hey, remember those cool scooters in school, like elementary school we would all ride on, or we all went on cool math games, or we all watched this TV station or this cartoon as a kid. Like, nostalgia is a normal part of human life, but in some ways I felt seeing those videos on my social media feed as it's sort of evoking like a deeper feeling of wanting to go back to a world that no longer exists. And I think a world where it felt like there was some sense of normalcy where you could shut off the TV and politics stopped there, where, you know, maybe an election cycle, you would talk about who you were voting for, but after it was over, everyone went back to life as normal. Whereas now it feels like it dominates such a large part of our lives, where even normal events, what we're seen as kind of the neutral grounds or neutral settings for things that we experience as kids, are now made political. I mean, the Super Bowl or even the Olympics, to a lesser degree, is like a good example of that. Like, those were seen in the past when we were growing up as neutral grounds, and now politics still very much bleeds into them, and it's like you feel like you almost can't escape. I think that nostalgia is everyone intuitively like wanting to go back to that world of just normalcy that seemingly no longer exists.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree. And I do think like I'm pretty bullish on our generation. I think our generation is, you know, not like a victim card here, but I think our generation is probably the largest cohort on the receiving end of the folly of, you know, this sort of late stage political world we've built for ourselves, or that was built for us, that we had no hand in, right? We're just on the receiving end of like the grievances of boomers and Gen Xers. And I do feel a lot of consensus amongst like young people, you know, under 30s. I think there's a ton of consensus on like what we value, what we want. I say this, and then I don't know. Like, I say this because it's like I'm in an online space. I'm in a political space. Like anybody I talk to is like part of my world usually. So I hope it's the truth. I hope, you know, we seem to be a uniquely educated, aware generation that has a consensus on like what we want out of the world and what we want for ourselves, you know? And, you know, I only hope that when this moment fades, when this weird boomer Gen X, you know, political world dies off and we start to gain age of majority when we're in our 40s and 50s, hopefully we can carry these values throughout our entire lives and carry this desire for civility and this desire for like a true liberal meritocracy and have a fighting chance at everything and carry this into the future. So when we actually have the opportunity to instantiate it, to make it real, we can pull it off. But I don't know. I'm optimistic axiomatically. I think like to be pessimistic is to literally speak it into the world. And I think it's a moral obligation to be optimistic, even if it's, you know, even if you sound like an idiot by being optimistic. It's a moral obligation because you have to carry that spirit with you. You have to carry the spirit of like building a better world for yourself and for your family and for your friends and for your community, and holding that collective principle together. Because if you don't do that, if you're pessimistic, if you're black-pilled, if you're nihilistic, you'll create that world by the virtue of spreading that sort of emetic virus. So I'm optimistic fundamentally. It's hard sometimes, but I don't know. I have hope. Or the world ends in 5 years. I don't know. Or no. Here's my favorite crackpot sort of apocalypse theory is that, like, you know, we all think it's going to be China or Russia or the US. And then, you know, Botswana gets AGI first, or Botswana like gets AGI, and then the AGI lights the atmosphere on fire with math we didn't know existed. Like the world ends in the most random, pathetic way. Like just some random country accidentally like launches all the nukes with a virus because they got AGI before everyone else. So I don't know.
It's like a Hearts Iron 4 mod or something. Like, I'm gonna give this country like a bunch of bioweapons, and it just all goes up in flames.
Yeah, Turkmenistan, you know, some weird nutcase authoritarian regime. I do have to we have more time. I should go like at 7:50. I got to film at 8.
7:50. Okay, so, gotcha.
Yeah, like 20 more minutes.
Perfect. Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I'm trying to think. Let me see. I know this is kind of a big question, but you know, we've kind of talked politics, and one of the main reasons I think I wanted to talk to you specifically, Brogan, was because like something that I find so charming about your video, or not charming, something that I find so meaningful about your videos is that There's this like
Sorry, I just got another super chat here. One second.
Oh
sorry.
no, you're fine, dude.
What is this? Brogan, which Quest protein bar flavor do you think would be Antonio Gramsci's favorite if he were alive today? I don't Quest protein bars. I get the strawberry shortcake one. I think that's the best one. Although I feel like
that's gonna be good.
Sorry, go back to what you said before. But you ever eat protein slop and feel like like Nietzsche's Last Man? Like you eat like the protein clay log, and you're like, fuck, I'm pathetic.
Dude, yes. It's like a fucking like rock in your stomach almost. Like you just feel it inside your body, dude. It's insane. I don't know how you fix that. Do you just avoid protein slop, or what do you do? Do you heat it up in the microwave?
Oh god, I don't know. What do I? Yeah, I mean, I just try to eat whole foods. I've been on sardines and ground beef recently, and eggs and cheese.
Oh hell yeah,
that's always good. Anyway, sorry. Go back. You were on a good. You were gonna say something poignant.
Oh no, of course. Before I forget, I don't know if they sell it up where you're at in Canada, but if you have access to bison, dude, it's great protein and omega-3s and stuff like that. I highly recommend it. I grew up eating it and stuff like that. You would love it.
I've had bison. I think I had bison once. Maybe in Toronto I could get it, but definitely not. Yeah, there's no bison on the east coast of Canada, so.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. As we were saying though, I think what I like about your videos and what has made me like a longtime watcher is you have this deeper undercurrent of like the human experience and meaning. And that's something that I think about like a lot where, you know, I remember one of your videos I was watching the other day, you know, you have your iconic line, like never kill yourself. And you're saying, you know, if you kill yourself, you miss the big show, which I thought was like so funny to end the video off with. But I guess like in some ways I want to hear from like the depths of your heart, like what, and I maybe kind of asked this in a weird way earlier, but like, what's your maybe like philosophical or religious or however you want to put it, like axiom by which, like, what makes you get out of bed in the morning in terms of like your greater view of life? Not even just so much in like politics or what have you, but just like, what's for you the bigger vision, Brogan?
Oh, geez. I don't know. I just think it's good to define yourself as somebody who will always chase some form of excellence no matter the circumstances. And it's really important to ask yourself, and it's uncomfortable, but it's really important to ask yourself big questions about why you're doing what you do. Like when I was, you know, I wanted to be a painter originally was my sort of like career path. Like when I was young, I never imagined myself getting like a real job. I always thought like I'm going to be some form of artist. And then my early 20s, late teens, I was in art school doing like fine art, doing painting and doing like studio work, having a studio practice. And it was very unfulfilling because I think at some point I realized that like painting is very vain. And this is me, right? This isn't like, I'm not trying to be like a universalist here, but I always found painting personally was very, very vain. Like I just wanted to, you know, make these like 2D images and sell them and make my living selling paintings. I'm like, you know, this is no different than the way the fine art market works is very, you know, almost analogous to like the crypto market or NFTs, right? Like you make this thing and then you hype it, and you hype it in the fine art world. It's galleries and it's getting the right buyer and getting good donors. And then when you get the right buyer, you know, you sell a painting for like $10,000. Your body of work increases in value, right? You sell to somebody, they donate it, write it off as a tax refund. The tax refund, because they value it at $50,000. It's this whole like very, very sick financial game. And that's the way you make it in the art world most of the time, unless you want to like, you know, eat nothing and be broke, which is totally fine. But it was just very unfulfilling. And as I realized, like I started asking myself these very, very tough questions of like, why am I doing this? Like, am I going to be happy? Am I going to feel like my life on Earth was equivalent to something great if I just, put my all into painting? And the answer was no. And I think you just have like everyone has to ask themselves, right? Like, why am I doing what I'm doing? People can go 5 years of their life working towards something, and whether this is like you're in university, you get this good job, you end up at a high paying position at a good tech company, the job is stable, and you're like a project manager, and then you get there and you realize you're doing nothing. You realize you're getting paid $200K a year to answer like 3 emails a day and have this bullshit job, right? As an example. And if you never stop and ask yourself, like, what am I seeking out? You'll constantly make the wrong decision. Like, you really have to sit down with yourself and ask yourself, like, what is it that I want to do with my life? What goal am I reaching? And I think that is like ultimately what gets me out of bed. What like drives me is just like this chasing of making something great, like making something excellent. And when you fall short, it's just practice for the next one, when you do something great, it's practice for the next time. Everything is this practice, this like ever, it's like the Sisyphusian rock in the most beautiful way of like constantly just pushing up this hill over and over and over again and trying over and over again to make something excellent and make something excellent of yourself, and failing and trying again. And then you'll never do it, right? There's no crescendo, there's no peak where like everyone's like, oh, congratulations, you did it, right? You'll just die. You'll eventually grow old and die, but your entire life you were chasing this thing. You were chasing this sort of like this Christ-like concept of greatness, whatever that is for you. And I think that's the only way to find some sort of meaning in life, to find some sort of like contentment is chasing what this deified like biblical excellence that exists. Like, you can chase it, it's out there, it's above you, and you can reach up constantly and reach towards it and try to get it your whole life. And that's a life well lived.
It's constantly the pursuit to challenge yourself and make something great. Because if you're not moving in that way, you feel almost like, and I want your thoughts on this, you almost feel like you're rotting a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Right? Like that sort of like old school mentality of working, this garbage job until you're 65 and then retiring so you can sit on your couch or go to where do Canadians go to Cuba? This is like the classic every Canadian, because we can go and Cubans really like us and we have a lot of like deals with them on travel and shit. So like every Canadian vacations in Cuba like once a year on these resorts. And there's this like, Canadian boomer tradition of like, you retire and go to Cuba 3 times a year. You go to like a 4-star all-inclusive 3 times a year in Cuba. And like that, like I would blow my shit smooth off, man. If you were like, oh, hey man, here's $10 million, retire now, I'd be hanging from my ceiling in 3 months. Like, that's fucking miserable. You do rot. And I think this old school meme of thinking the point of life is to get to the point where you no longer have to do anything is spiritually vacant, right? It will lead you to a life of despair, a life of like a complete lack of meaning, a life of rotting.
100%. I mean, you look at, and you're the art historian, so maybe you need to correct me on this, but you look at someone like Salvador Dali or any of these great men in history that managed to continue to make art or literature or scientific discoveries up until the day they died. And yeah, maybe their life was busy, but it was full. There was a fullness to it that they had, that something like retiring and going to Cuba or going to Mexico and, just hanging out on a beach somewhere or sitting on your couch for the rest of your life, it doesn't lead to that kind of fulfillment. It doesn't lead to that fullness ever.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's weird. And it's weird even like, when you get young people who this whole idea of all these adult daycare jobs, right? Where you go get this job where you do nothing. And it's like half remote, half in the office. The office is like a salad bar and meditation pods and like a gym. And you bring that about in your life, Again, this gets like back to the last man thing. This sort of like you are the last man. You're just this like endlessly, babied, entertained, like subdued, spiritually vacant shell of a person just, existing in the modern world. with nothing, right? It's horrible. So it's also, I mean, the alternative is tough. The alternative of, I mean, I think when it comes to the types of people that can achieve something great, I do like there's like a bit of like biological realism to it, where there's a disposition of somebody who achieves something great. I don't think it's something, and whatever I'm saying great. I don't mean like a world conqueror. I just mean somebody who like lives a very actualized life, whatever that may be, right? If you're the best firefighter in your hometown, like that's an actualized life, right? So that takes that.
Oh no, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I interrupted.
Oh, sorry. There's that takes the right kind of person. Like you have to have. They call it tolerance for ambiguity, right? Like you know, like the ocean, like the big 5 personality traits.
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you do need like there's a combination of traits that for better or for worse, are a bit immutable. That you have to have this sort of like artist's mindset, this artist's way of doing things, where you have this openness to ambiguity, where you have this high tolerance for risk and ambiguity, and not knowing what the next year is going to look like. And if you're not that person, that's totally fine. But it's like because I always say these things to everybody, where people talk about like what the meaning in their life is, or how to find this meaning, and I always say the same thing. But like ultimately, it's up to the person. And not that I fucking do. I'm fucking 27. I don't know anything. I just know what's worked for me so far. So.
Well, and needless to say, something that, oh, by the way, how are you doing on time?
Good. What did we got here? Yeah, good for like 15 more minutes.
Oh, heck yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
There's almost this universal experience I notice amongst our generation. And I think other generations have had their moments of angst, their moment where, they were sort of oh, by the way, a super chat came in. Super chats, anyone that sent them, I'll just read them at the end because I want to respect Brogan's time and be able to get in as much talking as possible. But, every generation, young men specifically have had, I think, an experience of angst or longing or meaning kind of in their lives. But I think what's kind of been, in no other terms, kind of messed up about our generation is, especially amongst young men, when we talk, there's this universal experience of almost at one point going through kind of suicidal ideation. Like this idea of not only am I like struggling for meaning like every other generation has, but there's this like general loss of meaning. There's this general like loss of sort of a purpose or a drive or a world that makes me feel like I belong. And it's been striking kind of across talking to just different guys of our generation, how that's like a pretty universal experience. Have you noticed that too with your friends, Brogan, like talking about like we all kind of went through that moment?
Yeah, I think there's it's definitely it's an intersection of two different problems, right? There's the general like what am I doing with myself that any self-reflecting young person's going to experience, on top of just the general meaning crisis, right? Like we live in a pretty affluent time, things are getting tougher, things are getting more expensive, but like there's never been more ways to entertain yourself. There's never been more ways to subdue yourself, right? And so we have, I think it's very normal, especially when you're 20, 21, 22, to go through this sort of this realization of like, oh, is this all it is? Like this is it. Like you get into the real world and realize, oh, I just have to like chase enough money to live, and there's no mountain, there's no great project. There's this great philosopher Byung-Chul Han who speaks about this a lot, and when he talks about the meaning crisis, he has this great essay called "The Scent of Time," and what the scent of time, this concept is, we used to, I mean, throughout most of human history, we had these big ceremonies that like basically ritualistically brought you into the next stage of life. Young men, whatever the society was, right? Young men would go through these rituals, would go through these initiation ceremonies into manhood. You buy property, or you take a job or you have a child, you have this birthday, like you have these rituals that everyone had that just marked time, right? And that's the scent of time. The scent of time is the knowing like where you're at on this timeline. Like I am now a man, I do these things, and this is what it means to be a young man. This is what it means to be a grown man. This is what it means to be a father. This is what it means to be a community leader. And we don't have that anymore. Like we've totally eradicated all these initiation rituals, all these ceremonies from modern life. Now it's like, you know, you graduate high school, which is pretty universal. And then if you don't go to university, and, you know, say what you want about university, I don't want to get into, that's a whole other thing to crack open. If you don't go to university, yeah, you're sort of just like, you know, you're the same person from when you're 18 to when you're, you know, 30, 40, right? You don't feel like you're 30. You don't feel like you're older. You feel like an 18-year-old in a 28-year-old's body. And I think that just lends itself to this like meaning crisis, this slog of like, where does this go? What am I doing? Is this all there is? Like it's just cradle to grave, like this nothingness, this mush, and you're entertained the whole time, and you have no sense of like of direction. And I don't know. There's this movement called meta-modernism. A lot of people, if you know much about this, a lot of people think it's really cringy, but it's like a lot of this kind of group of philosophers that are trying to like figure out how to bring that back in to modern life, like or postmodern life, I should say, how to bring back in like this sense of ceremony, this sense of meaning that we used to get from religion, we used to get from, you know, higher powers, whatever they were. And I don't know, man, it's tough. Like I don't blame, you know, I think every young man, every young person goes through it. I don't blame anybody for asking those questions, because it's like it's not given to you anymore, right?
It's not.
I know. Like I was raised quite religious. I was raised Catholic, and I think a lot of people our age who look back to. A lot of people our age who come back to religion, not like they were always religious, like not like they were raised religious, but people who are agnostic or atheist their whole life. And then at some point in their mid-20s, they realize there's this meaning crisis. They realize that, okay, there's a lot of fundamental issues in society that we need to sort of rectify. We don't rectify like we were, you know, heading off a cliff. And the impulse to move back to religion, to a non-secular society, because obviously, right, like, having a true sense of like God in your life, having a true sense of like religious duty in your life is very substantial to meaning, right? But I think it's like, I don't think you can be agnostic or raised, you know, just secular humanist agnostic your entire life and then choose to go back to religion because of the meaning crisis, because it feels like it will give you meaning. Like if you don't believe that thing your entire life, you can't just pick the best part of it. So I think the impulse to go back to religion is also wrong. We need to find this middle ground of like, how do we bring back a true sense of duty and of journey in our lives in a postmodern sense, in a way that works in the 2020s.
Yeah, I think that there's kind of a way that some might view sort of like a return to religion or what have you as being sort of a sociological phenomenon, right? Where, you know, this is happening because there's a general like loss of meaning or what have you. That certainly plays like a role or a part. You know, just speaking from my experience, you know, I'm just this guy or whatever. But for me, I think it became a question of not so much what, you know, like what religion I thought was best for living how I wanted to live, or what I thought was, you know, kind of the most like way I wanted to fit everything. Because for a while I was like looking into Eastern religion and Buddhism and that kind of stuff, right? You know, I always call it white people Buddhism, because when you're like 13 or whatever, you read like one book on Buddhism, or you see like those you know, mindfulness beads or something, you think you're like really deep and spiritual, like you're the Beatles going to India. But I think for me, it was a question of truth. I just wanted to know what was truthful. It wasn't so much, you know, do I think this will make me the most happy? Because there's times in my life where I've even been going through it for the past 2 years where walking this religious journey, I'm not always happy. There's times of doubt, there's times of despair, there's times where I'm cast down on myself, but it's more this presence of I'm comforted knowing that I'm pursuing the truth. And I think in the internet, there are people that they turn to religion just for those sociological reasons. They're just trying to find some comfort, whether that would be religion or art or something like that. But I think that there are many people who they just kind of want to pursue truth at the end of the day. And I would say that anyone who winds up pursuing truth, even though I think we have a certain conception in the West, the postmodern West, of what Christianity is, I think they wind up finding Christianity again. And I hope I'm not coming off like I'm just hitting you with the stick and you're like, oh great, this guy's going on some sermon or whatever. But I guess this has just been kind of like my experience or of life or whatever.
Yeah.
And you can give me your honest thoughts. You're not going to offend me.
No. No. I agree. I have a similar path. Like I would have called myself a Buddhist for a bit. I was really into Buddhism and meditation. I was really into Tibetan Buddhism. Tibetan Buddhism is really fascinating. And then I have people always ask me if I'm Christian. Because I wouldn't call myself a Christian because I have arrived back at Christianity from this like more bird's eye view spiritual sense. Like I'm not reading the Bible, I'm not living life as a Catholic. So I would never call myself a Catholic or a Christian. But like I've come to understand, right? Like I was talking before, this chasing of excellence. Like that's sort of what Christ is to me. Is this manifestation of like narrative perfection that exists beyond you, right? And the project of life is to try to be like Christ, and you'll fail. And the point is that you fail. The point is that you fall short. And the point also is that you keep trying again and again. You keep reaching up for this ideal that is out of reach all the time, but you spend your life reaching up for it. And that's my interpretation, and like in a sort of idiosyncratic sense. It's why I wouldn't call myself a Catholic or a Christian. I do just worry that people, will take it all back, hook, line, and sinker. And, I guess sort of like miss the forest for the trees. And instead of, looking at what, there's this great book by Aldous Huxley called The Perennial Philosophy, where he talks about this. Like, what is the commonality between like world religions? What is like the horizontal connection that like makes a religious structure, and why are religious structures good for societies? Religious structures are good for societies because they offer that ideal, right? Like Islam offers it, Judaism offers it, Christianity offers it, Buddhism offers it. It offers this ideal to chase, this ideal to try to align yourself with over and over and over again. And we can go back to that, but then I think with Catholicism to think the point of Catholicism wasn't to mistake the point of Catholicism for like the rules and the structure. I mean, structure is good, but like the literal rules, the literal structure, the literal like tenets of Christianity, the sort of like anti-human, anti-egalitarian aspect of Christianity. I know I believe Christianity is the most equal religion. Like it is the one that most recognizes human rights. But there is sort of like, to be against to be like, oh, I need meaning in my life, I'm going to turn back to Christianity. Now all of a sudden I'm homophobic, or I don't like gay people because of these new tenets I follow. I'm now, from a Christian conservative sense, against homosexuality, even though my entire life I wasn't. But now I have to be because I have to follow these rules now. Like that, the impulse to move back to Christianity scares me for that reason, is that we're going to not take the spiritual boon of it and just go right back to like an attempting of living life of like by the literal tenets of Catholicism, which I think is just, it's incongruent with, modern society. It's incongruent with America and Canada and Western Europe in the 2020s. Like we've built this little world for ourselves. Let's figure out how to make this little world work for us, rather than retreat back to a world that might have had more meaning, but a world that was ultimately far less equal.
Mm, mm. And something that you said, it's kind of funny. You were talking about, striving towards, almost like the figure of Christ, right? And the instant word, you've probably heard of this word before, the Greek word theosis. Have you heard that word brought up before? I instantly thought theosis when you were saying that, where it's this not becoming like God in the way that I literally become my own God or what have you, but almost that there's this light, to use kind of maybe, I guess maybe this would be surrealist terms, but like there's this light, there's this heat, there's this meaning, there's this thing beyond myself that I'm coming back to, but almost I'm like made for. There's such a profound beauty in it, and I think like something that can I be real with you for a moment, Brogan, if that's okay?
Yeah.
I know, dude, I felt, and I'll say it again, I know I texted you this, but that one day I was going off and I made that like mean tweet and you were in it and stuff like that. I was like, I look back on myself, I was like, dude, I was being a jerk. I was being a dick. Like, what was I thinking? And I was not being like Christ-like in that moment or whatever. And I want to go out on a limb and say, I'm sorry again for that, man. Like, I really do like value and love and respect what you do. And I think you're a really good guy. You're a great guy. You're somebody who's a real human being, and it's like you're living this experience of life that we're all living through. And I think what was kind of an impulse in there was like, I see someone like you who's a real human being pursuing truth, pursuing goodness and light and virtue. And it feels like, I don't know, like in a weird way, it's like he's so close. You know what I mean? And I don't mean that in a condescending way. I know oftentimes Christians maybe come off that way where it's like, oh, you don't know and I'm over here, whatever. No, not in that way at all. We're all making this journey. But like there's such this like great emphasis in your videos and like the stuff that you do on not only meaning, but like what is it all for? Like, why am I here? Right? I'm not here to just live as getting a job, making money, retiring on a beach somewhere, but there's this greater purpose. There's this greater thread that runs through everything that you do. And I think I see that, and I'm just like, dude, like I have no other way to say it, but you're loved. Like there's somebody who's loved you from eons in the cosmos. And I see that goodness so poured out in you and stuff like that. I'm like, he's so close. Like let me know if I'm off the reservation or whatever. I know I'm having like a weird moment, but it's something that I really value about you, dude. Like you're just a real human being. And I can tell that like truth is at the center of your heart. And I think in that moment, my moment of making a fool of myself, like it was almost like seeing you as my brother and just being like, I just want him to see like what he's always been searching for. I don't know if that makes any sense or whatever, but I'm getting deep and I'm being real. So maybe that's kind of messy emotions or what have you, but go ahead and share your thoughts or what have you.
No, you're fine, dude. I mean, I always, I troll on Twitter all the time. So I totally, I get it. I have, Brylan Hollyhand.
Yeah, dude. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I reply to like everything he posts with like really smarmy, like ironic posts. I can't help it sometimes. So I get it. Twitter pulls that out in people. Yeah, I mean, I feel that, right? I feel that. I feel like, I don't know. There's something. There's just something worth communicating. There's something like worth trying to figure out.
Yeah.
In a real sense, in a sense that sort of like underpins everything we all do. And to not try once, right? To not try to poke at it, right? This kind of like raw bleeding heart of humanity to not try to like rip it open and poke at it a little bit. It's just it sucks, you know, because it's there and it has to be addressed.
100%.
Right? It's ultimately like, you know, I want to be polemic sometimes, and I am polemic, and especially on the politics side. Like I have, you know, I'd love to be the guy who could like go onto a debate and just be like, "Fuck you," like rip people to shreds. But I'm just not that. I'm not that guy at all. I don't have that dog in me to just like to be that polemic, to be that objective in the moment. So I don't know. It's hard, right? It's hard. I don't think it's kind of dark when you see it too. When you see people debate politics and when you see people debate in general, right? And like the interactions people have online, Norway's just so bleak. It's so bleak to like to take another human and just other them as somebody who like is fundamentally flawed, to other them as somebody who is like fundamentally stand, who's fundamentally broken, who like is irredeemable, right? I think is incredibly bleak.
And it's not right. And it
Yeah.
It does this thing where we no longer see each other's faces in a very real way. And I don't mean literally like we don't see each other's faces. Like at the bottom of it, it's like you're dehumanizing a person, and that person is a collection or a totality of so many memories and experiences and personality. And it's sad. There's a tragedy to it.
Yeah. No, 100%. 100%. I mean, you know, it's funny sometimes. That's the worst part, but it is tragic.
Well, and how are you on time, brother?
I'm I gotta wrap up. I have my editors coming in like 5 minutes. I gotta go film some stuff. So
that's totally fine. If you want, go ahead and tell us where we can find you and stuff like that. I want the people to know listening. I know I have a very small audience, but even if it leads to, you know, 1,000 more subscribers or something, we want to go follow you everywhere.
I'm art chat on everything. On like YouTube is my main platform. Substack, I've been on Substack more recently. Twitter, Instagram, just like if you look at art chat on any platform, I'll come up.
Dude, absolutely. Well, and it's criminal because like you're well followed on YouTube, but I was like looking at your X and your Instagram. It's like we got to get those numbers up for you, man, because you're making great stuff.
Yeah, I'm not the best on X. I have a few, like I'll get a big viral thing. X is weird, man. I'll get a big viral thing like every week. I'll have a big post that gets like 2,000 likes, and then it's just like nothing again. So I don't know. I don't do short form either. I think if I did short form stuff, I would be really big everywhere else. But no, just YouTube.
No,
which
that's
I'm
okay.
fine with. That's the only one I care about. So.
Yeah, well, you have a good channel, man, and I want everyone to check out your stuff. You're doing great work and stuff like that, and I really appreciated having you on. I hope you had a good time and stuff like that, too. I know it's always a little awkward meeting new people and stuff like that, but, dude, this was an invaluable conversation, honestly, to me.
Yeah, no, same. It's been it's been fun. This has been real. Sorry, just a second there.
Oh, dude,
yeah, no,
totally
it's been a good conversation. Good conversation.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to we should talk again. If I used to stream like 3 times a week and then I stopped, but been thinking recently I'm gonna start streaming again and set up somewhere else. So when I start streaming again, we should definitely talk again.
Dude, I'd be honored. And it goes without saying, I know you come down to the States a lot. If you're ever in Colorado, you always got a home here, man.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I've never been down to Colorado, so
heck yeah, you got to come visit.
Yeah, man. Dope. Okay, I gotta let you go. I gotta go let my editor in.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you later, okay?
See you, man.
Let's go.